Hi, I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
And I'm Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And we're the insiders. And today we're talking about one of the biggest insider issues that's out there, which is redistricting. An important issue that a lot of voters don't pay attention to, but it matters. It matters for close to a decade. So now we have maps from the Republicans and we have maps from the governor's commission. The legislature seems poised to pass their maps very shortly, and the governor seems ready to veto them the minute they reach his desk. So what's going to happen here, Chuck?
Well, first, the Republican maps are remarkably partisan. They must have an awfully high confidence level that Republican Wisconsin Supreme Court is going to just go with the partisan maps, because they have drawn maps that they say, and they tried to pass a legislative standard that says, oh, minimum disruption from the most partisan gerrymander in the country from 10 years ago should be maintained with as little disruption to voters as possible. Wow. I can't believe the Supreme Court would buy that if there's any sense of balance there, but they may. So what will happen? Yes, they will pass these crazy maps. The governor will veto them. Then where will we end up? There's been a federal 3-judge panel, which seems pretty nonpartisan, a Trump person who's the higher ranking district court judge, and then two circuit court judge, two of the federal district court judges. I'm getting the numbers wrong, but the bottom line is a fairly balanced map. But the Wisconsin Supreme Court, as soon as the Fed said, well, we'll take this and get it done, within a day, the Wisconsin Supreme Court said, we're going to take it. That tells me they're going to do it. What I'm afraid of is that Republicans on this Supreme Court, and I'd call them Republicans, I should call them conservatives, but the reality is they've been having their races run by Republican operatives for many years, as have the progressives. There was one Republican or conservative justice on the Supreme Court who actually had his campaign run right out of the Republican headquarters of Wisconsin. How can they possibly say that they are nonpartisan and that they will make a fair decision in this case? I don't think they can, which is why, by the way, Justice Ziegler, Chief Justice Ziegler, and Justice Rogensack, when the court was considering this back in 2008, 2009, said, oh, we shouldn't do this. This would be too partisan. It won't be perceived fairly. And by the way, this is also why for the last 60 years, whenever there was a court decision on these matters, it ended up in the federal courts. Why? Because previous Wisconsin Supreme Court members said, you know, we don't want to get into this political quagmire and look like we are partisans. We want to maintain the integrity and independence of the court. And by the way, that leads to the only place where I think there's a chance that we might get some fairness out of this. And that is this, is either Justice Rogensack, who will be leaving, would she like her legacy, likely, that's the word, would she like her legacy to be, hey, I've managed to put together a balance here on one of the last big things that we decided? Or, and I think more likely, because I doubt that that will happen, more likely is Justice Hagedorn, who has shown some independence. Would he like to say, you know, I'm going to show some real intellectual firepower here. I'm going to show some real independence. And I'm actually going to take a step back and try to draw balanced and fair maps. And what does that look like? I'll tell you what it looks like. It will look like a map where the Senate will be very competitive with multiple competitive seats, but probably on balance will be won by Democrats. And the Assembly will be competitive on a variety of seats, but less competitive than the Senate. And that will probably be won by Republicans. That would be the balanced, fair map that should come out. But given the actions of the Supreme Court here, they will be deciding, and I think they're going to be deciding in favor of a very partisan map. And the actions of the legislature give us an indication that that's what they believe as well.
Well, as we've been saying for, all year long, I guess now, these maps are going to be drawn by a court. We may not know which court will be drawing the maps yet, but they are going to be done by a court and not by the legislature and the governor. There's a couple things that are increasingly clear, though. You take a look at the maps from Governor Evers' commission, and they favor a Republican majority in both houses of the legislature. The Republican maps, of course, also favor a Republican majority in both houses of the legislature. At the moment, those are the maps that the courts are going to be seeing, is both of them producing Republican majorities in both houses of the legislature. The map from Governor Evers' commission still has not addressed the Federal Voting Rights Act. So they've taken two cracks at it, and yet they're reducing the number of seats likely to elect a Black legislator from 6 to 4, and the number of seats likely to elect a Hispanic legislator from 2 to 1. There's no way that a court, state or federal, is likely to sign off on a map that reduces the chances of minorities getting elected to office. That is clearly not going to pass the constitutional muster, whether it's at the state level or at the federal level. And it is sort of one of the big secrets here. When Democrats say they want fair maps, they're trying to make the state more competitive, so the houses are closer to 50-50, like the total statewide vote is. If they do that, they will be busting up the concentration of minority voters, splitting them into districts all over the place, and that violates all sorts of standards that courts have normally used with regards to these maps. So the Democrats' goal of trying to use those votes to create fair maps or competitive districts will actually reduce the odds of electing minorities to office in Wisconsin. And I think that's one of sort of the untalked about stories here in the redistricting process.
Well, I think I have to agree with Scott that when you have amateurs, and some of the folks doing some of the Fair Maps group are amateurs, you get bad results. And the problem with redistricting is it only comes up every 10 years. So there are very few people who can make a living being redistricting experts. I guess Joe Handrick has done it, and he's done a very good job for the Republicans, although he's not involved on the Republican side this time. But you pay a law firm $500,000 or $1 million, or maybe 2 or 3 million like the Republicans do, and you'll get some good results. By the way, the court, of course, will see different maps, Democratic maps that will keep the minority representation correct. They aren't out there right now, and you'll see them. And that's something that will be, Scott and I am sure will revisit this topic several times more before it's all concluded. But Scott is right that the amateurs here didn't do a very good job. But at the end of the day, it is easier. The state is a 50-50 state. So if you're a numbers person, you understand this. The more districts you have to draw, the harder it is to keep the balance in the legislature when you have one group, the Democrats, very concentrated in Madison and Milwaukee. However, when you have a smaller number of districts, like in the state Senate, then you are able to draw fair maps that still deliver an opportunity for Democrats to win. And the court will see that. The question is whether the court will be nonpartisan enough, or will the court say at some point, this is really partisan stuff. Maybe what we should do, and this would be the most noble thing on the part of the Wisconsin Supreme Court and would really restore a lot of integrity and a sense of independence. If they said, we looked at this and we have concluded that we cannot do this without at least the perception of a very partisan result. And given that, we are going to step back here. We're going to let the federal courts decide. And then I think we have a chance at getting fair maps that will both respect the minority representation issues as well as the partisan issues.
Well, the last time the federal courts drew the maps here in the state of Wisconsin in 2002, it produced what, for a good chunk of the next few years, were Republican majorities in both houses of the legislature. The Democrats were able to take it back in a wave, but would not have taken it back in a normal set of elections. And that's actually what the maps drawn by even Governor Evers' commission do. The Democrats can only win the majorities in both houses in a wave election. Other than that, they're likely to produce Republican majorities in both houses of the legislature. I'm going to agree with you on one thing, Chuck, is we'll be talking about this subject again, because there are many, many more chapters to come in this very, very important story.
Well, at least we agree on one thing. See you next time.